Hello everybody, and welcome back to another weekend of FRS Season 6. Coming up on the halfway point of the season here, round 5 of 10, about to be kicking off on this one lovely Friday, where it is absolutely baking where I am, so forgive if you hear a little bit of fan in the background. That is solely the only way I am not melting currently. PC Division R coming up to kick off this race weekend. You can see the calendar. We're right there, round 5 of 10. We're headed to Miami next weekend before we get our one and only off weekend ahead of Hungary. But then it's a short run, Australia, Abu Dhabi, Brazil. So it's just about getting to the point where these championships are going to start dialing their way in. And we are, of course, at Silverstone. Iconic classic track. Has been around for all 6 FRS seasons, has served as one of the few season finales, and has also was the preseason opener track for the launch day stream we did in F1 2020, I believe it is. But it is about 5 minutes left to go, 6 minutes to be exact. Now 5 minutes, it ticks over. We're just waiting for the rest of the crew to get loaded into this PC Division R race. Of course, it's the open division, so there is no full-time championship on it, but there are points being recorded for just statistical purposes. And it just kind of allows anybody to get in and get some early running on the weekend, get some test work in at the start of this one. Right now, it looks like we got 14 drivers in the lobby, with a couple still on the way, according to the attendance bot. Should probably see another 3 or 4 as one of them disappears and disconnects right then. Couldn't really tell who it was. But it's been a decent season so far. Plenty of excitement, plenty of action. Austria, of course, generated a ton of stewards tickets because it always creates some shambles, being such a tight circuit. But also created some really good racing. We saw quite a lot of rain last week in Austria. If you take a look at the Twitter and Instagrams, you can see a lot of the race winners were on Inter tires when their screenshots were taken. So a lot of wet weather running done last week. And there's still quite a bit of wet running done in Austin the week before. Can we make it 3 in a row? We may be seeing some rain here in Silverstone. It's always got the possibility for it, of course, and create some really good racing when it does gets raining. It looks like that might have been Zetos that dropped out. Steam issues. We may be just a couple of minutes behind schedule. If that's the case, some people are having to restart Steam in order to get into the lobby, so we'll give them a little bit of a grace period, as it's the only race running today. Just this one on Friday, PC Division 4, and of course, tomorrow is when all the other divisions really start to kick off. You've got PC Division 1 and Xbox Division 1 at the start of the day, with PC Division 3 in the later second slot. Or PC Division 4, rather, in the second slot. And then on Sunday, you get PlayStation Division 1, PC Division 3, and then wrapping up the race weekends with PC Division 2 as usual. The racing tomorrow starts an hour earlier than this one is scheduled, so we go for UTC-based time. So 8 p.m. UTC is when PC Division R is scheduled to go off. PC Division 1 and Xbox Division 1 tomorrow, 1 hour earlier at 7 p.m. UTC. And then right after that is when we get into PC Division 4, which usually involves me jumping very quickly out of the Xbox seat, getting all my stream settings switched over, and then getting PC Division 4 booted up as fast as I possibly can. looks like Kane has made it in. We're back up to 14 drivers. I don't see Zados, who has said they've had some Steam connection issues, so I don't think they've got theirs rebooted just yet. The technical track, of course, lots of high-speed corners, so mid to low downforce probably going to be useful here, and it'll probably kind of balance out between the two. So we'll just have to wait and see what kind of setups drivers opt for in this one, and hopefully we can get some good action. It is just about 1 minute till. I think we may be waiting for maybe one or two other drivers, but I think we might be getting underway relatively shortly. And we'll see what everybody's got to offer in this one. Riemann, Falstax, Dog, Wilco, Lato, Ruprath, Runavatio, Stark, Brad Spit, Gully, Angelo Civic, Seriton, Kane, and Pathaman all in the lobby as it stands. Doesn't appear, aside from, I think, our top division drivers are going to be Division 2 drivers this race weekend. Zados appears to have his Steam back up, and so he'll be in shortly. And we've lost the lobby host. Fun. So we may be a minute or two delayed on this one as our lobby host just disappeared. And we'll sort that out for you shortly. Hopefully it is just a momentary disconnection. Unfortunately, it does mean somebody else is currently in control of the lobby. And we just get to hang out for a minute. So people will be disconnecting from this here lobby, as I will do the same. We'll just have to wait and hang out. We'll keep an eye on some of the divisional races that are popping up on the screen. Gali and Zados falling down the order in PC Division 3. Of course, their points total still keeping them in the race at the moment, but they have been promoted to Div 2, so don't expect them to stay on there for the entire rest of the season. They may actually still sneak a top 10 finish based on the way it's going. 43 points may score them right up amongst the top of the field there. Here's a few stats about the lovely Silverstone, of course. Nearly 6 kilometers in distance. It's the second longest circuit on our calendar of the FRS this season. Of course, the longest is Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. It's only the second track to use the hardest compounds of tires too, the C1, C2, C3. Spain was the only other place using those hardest of hard compound tires. So definitely a high energy circuit that puts a lot of pain into them. PC Division 4's championship. Space Coast has really worked their way up towards the front, battling it out with Stolen Valor. Only 6 points in that championship. It was looking like between the after the first round or so, Squids was going to be one of your real championship leading protagonists along with Stolen Valley, but Space Ghost has picked up a couple of wins and put themselves right towards the top of the field. Looks like we're going to be going just a couple of minutes after scheduling here. Of course, we should be going right about now, but not quite, because apparently Steam is having some connection issues. We've had 4 or 5 drivers have their Steam connection up and down. I think Riemann, our lobby host, should be back up relatively shortly. Just waiting for the say-so from them to get it underway. You see the lobby statistics, or I mean the track statistics come up again. It's a bit deceptive, the grid to turn 1 stat. It is 239 meters. However, as we're looking over turn 1 right now, you can see it's a pretty wide corner. It's flat out in race conditions, so you really don't get on the brakes until quite a bit further down the road. So even though the turn-in for turn 1 is only about 230 meters away, if you can still kind of go in with a decent chat before you hit your first proper braking zone. And then, of course, 2 DRS zones around here. Taking a look at some of the best overtaking opportunity now. Brooklands into Luffield. And then, of course, the old pit straight, as well as you head down into Cops, where you may be able to get a decent run-up if somebody is particularly brave. Looks like Raymond's got a new lobby up. We will join that one up. We will attempt to join that lobby. And we've really burned our whole 15 minutes. Go ahead and restart this bad boy. I think for a brief moment, I even lost Steam connection. There we go. So, it's going around, everybody. Connection problemos. But people are now sorting their way back into the lobby. And I don't believe it was purely internet. It was just Steam. So Steam's having a little bit of a tough day, unfortunately. So that is why there's the delay. We are at this point 6 minutes behind schedule. We are getting drivers back into the new lobby. False tax just dropped out because of Steam problems. So as soon as we can get a sufficient number back in, including Mr. False Tax, we'll get back underway, as False Tax was one of the early championship leaders of this PC Division R, technically. And yeah, we're seeing quite a few dropping in. Yeah, let me go ahead and pop into the usual channels. Mr. Coral in the channel. Just make sure it is up for that as well. Yeah, come help me kill the time while Steam is doing its thing. That is, you know, lovely. Well, we're not proving to be the most on-time division this week, are we?
Ah, yes. But it's a kickoff, a little bit of a host issues, so hopefully we get it out of the way early and everything else is set. But good afternoon or evening to all of those that are tuning in to the good old Division R.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one. I see Yag is already in there doing rain dances, which I don't think we need any more trouble for this particular lobby. I think we just need something to go off without a hitch, but who knows?
Yeah, we've had a lot of rain across I think several of the divisions the past few weeks, and we go to Silverstone, which is typically plagued with rain. So I'm personally hoping for a dry race, hoping for less safety cars. Typically you don't have too many incidents here at Silverstone, given the absolute enormous runoff you have around most of the corners. So hopefully we do get some good racing, and at that, some good racing in the dry.
Yeah, most definitely. I was mentioned it earlier, but in making all the podium graphics, I noticed a lot of times the screenshots I was grabbing, winners were crossing the line with intermediate tires on. It's like that, and we had some more rain than I would expect to have in Austin the week before as well. So the rain has definitely been around the league this time, and as you say, Silverstone definitely is a track where you can get more rain for sure.
Yeah, and I think that if we have another full wet race in Division 1, we might have a few protesters in the chat. But, Silverstone this year, and I don't know how many have really driven it, and I haven't had a whole lot of practice this week, but I did run it in another league earlier shortly after F122 released. And I do think that you can overtake this year in the rain. I think that you can actually throw it down. Whether it's into Stowe, into Club, you can overtake here in the rain, where last year with the way that dirty air worked and the tires, it was impossible, but I do think it's possible this year.
Yeah, it may be something we just have to find out on, but if we do get some dry running, it is a track where you can do a bit of overtaking. It's not the easiest. You've got to really know how to drive in that dirty air, because your best overtaking opportunities do come after some very downforce dependent corners. But if you can get a good run on somebody out of that, the DRS is just about at a decently tuned spot where it gives you enough to pull kind of alongside, but not make it an easy all the way past them kind of pass.
Exactly. And I think that there's going to be a variety of setups as well. You can really gain time in a lot of ways in this track. There are, obviously a series of straights between the Hangar Straight, the Wellington Straight, and the newly named Hamilton Straight. So if you go super low downforce, there are the opportunities to gain some time, but you can also gain some time with a little bit of downforce. Maggots and Beckett's, Club, those areas you can really exploit that downforce to get a good run onto those straights. So I think we're going to see a variety of different setups, and it could be interesting to how that impacts the ability to overtake and where those overtakes are happening.
Yeah, and I've definitely found in warm up and trying to get setups dialed in, it's kind of tough to get the car balanced between good front end grip, good rear end grip. You get some good nose in front wing to try and get through Maggots and Beckett's, but then it makes getting on the power through the final corner pretty tricky on throttle, especially through left field as well. And then, or if you try to balance it for more rear end stability, then you get that big understeer when you try and turn the car into cops, where you really want that front end to hook up. So it's definitely a circuit of compromise in the setups. So we'll see some drivers may be able to rotate, get themselves a better run out of a corner. Others may be able to send it in some of the high speed sections and carry a lot more speed.
For sure. I think something else that's very interesting too is that this year, speaking of those setups, I have found that the setup required for quali and the setup required for race, differ possibly more than I've ever noticed. I'm having to dock off significant front wing for the race, where the advantages of having that front wing and a very oversteery setup for quali is definitely there. And I feel like last season, in 2021, I almost never changed my setup, maybe 1 or 2 clicks for the front wing between quali and race, where it's very different this year. You have to really maximize and find that quali setup, and then you have to find and maximize that race setup. And more often than not, the race setup is going to be very understeery, while your quali setup is going to be very oversteery. So it makes it even more difficult to really exceed.
Yeah, once you throw that heavy fuel in, it changes pretty much the entire characteristics of the car in this game. And of course, as as many drivers have noted, that time trial setups even are vastly different than what you would use for qualifying and race. So it's a little bit harder with the way the tires are modeled to really dial in a setup purely in time trial. I know at least that's what I would do, is pretty much run time trial laps in previous games until I felt I had a good setup there, and it was pretty much maybe a tiny 1 or 2 click adjustment to tire pressures, and I could use that for the race. But this season, in the 2022 game, it's much different. Getting those, I can really only use time trial as a baseline, and then I have to make some decent changes doing test running in Grand Prix mode.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the calendar, we've had a very, I would say, front half of the calendar that is very normal for FRS. We've seen Spa quite a bit, Austria quite a bit, Silverstone quite a bit. And then we're going to soon move into the back half of this calendar where we have Miami, brand new track. Hungary is typically not on the FRS calendar, although it's an absolute pleasure to drive in F122. Austria, which has got significant changes, so basically a new track. Abu Dhabi also has significant changes, so basically a new track, and then Brazil. So we're headed for a back half of the season, I think, that could really leave out some surprises to who's able to learn these new tracks, the different corners, and really maximize their pace compared to somebody who, in the front half of this calendar has driven multiple seasons with FRS and is able to claw back on their prior experience to get those good results.
Yeah, I think Hungary's probably has only been on the calendar twice, if I remember correctly. Australia, of course, it's been around a couple of times, but as you mentioned, big changes to the track this time around. So that definitely, has made the racing a fair bit different there. And then Abu Dhabi's got some reprofiling and changes as well. And I don't believe Abu Dhabi has yet featured on a main FRS season. I know it's been utilized as a eval race circuit, but has not been part of the main season. But of course, you have to end with Brazil. You can't end anywhere else. I think the only other time we on purpose didn't end at Brazil, we actually ended here at Silverstone, and people were still unhappy that Brazil was the season opener that season.
Yeah, and something, interesting too is that Hungary, you go look at your time trial setups and almost everybody's going to be pretty close to 50-50 on their wings. Very, very heavy downforce track. And then you're going to go to Australia, which does have some twisty bits, but the new length of Sector 2 in the straights is so significant that you really get punished for running downforce. And then back to Abu Dhabi as well, that since they've taken out a lot of those hard chicanes in the corners, it is leaning more towards a low downforce track as well. So I'm really looking forward to the back half of the calendar, even though I missed the last 2 weeks. Going to Miami, Hungary, and then Australia. It's really quite a great calendar.
Yeah, you mentioned the point about 50-50 wings in Hungary, and well, we've already seen 0-0s in Spa, so we can see literally the opposite ends of the spectrums in setup. So could be an interesting one, and may bring out some drivers that handle the higher downforce stuff a little better compared to those on the lower downforce.
Yeah, and somewhere else where I think we may see 0-0 is actually this weekend at Silverstone. It is possible. I do think that you do lose some time in certain corners, but if you can really hook up a quali lap around Silverstone and you're running 0-0 wings, it's going to be really, really hard for people around you to overtake. And when they do, they're going to be burning a lot of ERS to get around you, and so you should have ample opportunities in the following lap to retake that position.
Yeah, most definitely, and it's a tough track to regen ERS on. It's not the worst track we visited, but it is, at least as far as my testing, only going to give you back about 8 to 9% per lap if you don't use your overtake at all. So you really need an overtaking opportunity to come off and dial in. Otherwise, you're going to be spending 5-6 laps just building the charge back up to try and re-overtake. And with only 26 laps in the race, you're spending a quarter of the race trying to get energy back if you have an attack that doesn't quite go off.
Yep, and something else to consider here is that I think this is the longest pit stop on the calendar. I mean, it's 31 seconds to make a pit stop. So strategy is heavily dependent around when you actually make that pit stop, your tire situation, and what you want to turn that long run on, whether you want to get that done first and get into the box and go long in the second half of the race, or whether you want to try to go long wait for people to pit in front of you and then hope that you've got some clear air to run in before making your stop towards the end of the race. I think that if you think about strategy, Silverstone is probably the toughest race to figure out what's going to work best for you.
Yeah, and it's pretty much a track where a one stop is kind of off a two stop is kind of off the table. There's, I think a minimum of 27 seconds lost, usually on average closer to 29. So it's a huge, huge time loss, just the way you kind of have to trundle through a very, very, very long pit lane. So it is going to be painful. I think we're finally getting some people into the lobby. There's been some up and down connections. I think we're still missing one or two. But we've got 14 of the 15, I think it is, if I'm trying to remember. I think the only person that may be missing might be Ruprath. I think that's it. But I think we're about to get finally underway. Only about 20 minutes after schedule. It was kind of the last second part. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the FRS intros. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the FRS. We are here in Season 6, kicking off Round 5, the halfway mark of the season with PC Division R here at Silverstone. At over 27 seconds, drivers lose the largest amount of time here in the pits at Silverstone, so look for that to play a big role in strategy around this track here. 5.8 kilometers and 18 turns around this historic circuit. Just the two DRS zones for your best overtaking opportunities, but it's definitely a technical track with good selection of high speed, low speed, and medium speed corners. It's one of only 3 tracks to host an FRS season finale. It's joined by Interlagos and the Red Bull Ring, which was not originally on the schedule as a season finale, but because of some desync issues changed. But here are your best action zones. Brooklands and Luffield, the combination after your first DRS zone. A switchback from a long left-hander to a very, very long right-hander lets the battle go on side by side. And then down the second DRS zone, you head into Stowe. Not a super heavy braking zone, but getting the slipstream out of Maggots and Beckett's can really help you make a move. Here are the compounds of tires here. The medium ends up being about 0.7 per a second lap slower, and the hards 1.3. And in this 26-lap race, the hards can go about 18 laps, the mediums about 14, and the softs only about 8. So don't expect to see too many of those in race conditions. But now, as drivers are just about getting out on track, I will bring in my co-commentator for the time, Mr. Coral. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. It's good to see everybody back at Silverstone, and even better to look out at the weather, and it seems to be dry. So we'll see if that happens or stays during the race, but I do love to see a dry race here at Silverstone.
Most definitely, yeah. There's plenty of opportunity for some good racing side by side, and we may be getting some wet weather in the race itself, as some drivers are posting a screenshot of seeing some wet weather in the race. But we know there is a little bit of a bug with that. I believe the race notes were set to the perfect weather setting because it has less issues with it, but I don't know if it made it through in all the lobby problems that we were having in PC Division R. So we'll just have to find out at the end of this 18-minute qualifying session if indeed there's going to be water on the track in the actual race.
Yeah, and looking at that image of the weather from the Discord, I am seeing that it is possibly bugged, and typically when we see that, it's situations where certain drivers are going to start hearing things from their engineer that might be a little bit different than what's in reality, but it's a good opportunity for people to try different setups and get used to the wet. But I think we're seeing a few people. Lazo, the former intense battle that I had last season and season 2 is out on track. And looking at those that are participating this week and that running board, I think between Zados and Lazo and maybe a couple others, we'll have a very heated competition for pole.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a tight one, as Lazzo has actually gone a little bit faster than Zados, as they're just starting to get their lap times rolling in now, as we see Zados working their way through, I believe that was Cops. I've apparently forgotten to bring up the track map, so I apologize for that. So now we can see where people are. But yeah, coming through Beckett's and Chapel, utilizing that bit of grass that has always been about as grippy as a piece of tarmac, which is surprising.
Yeah, and actually running out that far is very critical to the lap. Being able to carry the speed back onto that hanger straight is very important. And we see Lazo here, 2 purple sectors, unfortunately invalidates. It looks like he's going to hop into the pits.
Yeah, Zados made that mistake just on the exit of Stowe. It's so easy to carry a little bit too much speed and get on the exit curbing there, as Letzo sets the provisional pole time at 27.9. We will see who is going to contend with that next. Next up across the line, though, will be Renovatio, and they seem to be well outside of it. Should be somewhere in the 29s to 30s kind of range. Goes 29.4, but everybody just kind of getting their cider laps in. And, of course, Silverstone is one of the tracks where you see more invalidations than some of the other circuits.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the tracks of, you look at it on the surface, and it's a very wide track surface. Nowhere around do you really have a narrow segment of the track, but it is trying to maximize speed does really lend you to maximizing every inch of the tarmac that's available, and sometimes results in those invalidations.
And it tends to usually be a pretty good indicator if in the qualifying session you see lots of track limits, invalidations. You're likely going to have to be doing a little bit of math towards the end of the race because of track limit penalties.
Yeah, and as we're seeing a couple more cross the line here, it does seem that that 27.9 by Lazo is a fantastic preliminary pole position time. We'll see how that shakes out. Dog is always a very good qualifier, and Zados has a lot of speed. But sinking down, especially into the low 27s, I think is where we're going to see some of the faster runners, maybe even at peak into the 26s, as we see Wilco here spin coming out of Stowe. Get that car straighted and back into the pits to refuel and strap on a new set of tires.
Yeah, Stowe seems to be a little bit trickier in this year's game. The back end doesn't quite want to stick down the way you would want. It seems to have a little bit more of that hump just past the apex that gets the rear end a little bit light. And if you're just too eager on the throttle, that back end loves to snap around on you. Ruprath is going to be next up across the line. They've set a purple middle sector, personal best in the first. They were showing about 0.2 behind Lazzo's ultimate pace, and ultimately will come in about 0.3 behind as they go up into a provisional P2 on this one. Dog is on a decent lap through the first sector. It looks like Stark may have actually just finished their lap, so 28.4. As the drivers start to work their way down the order. Dog diving in early, so trying to grab somebody who's on a lap, and everybody keeps bailing out.
Yeah, this is one of the tracks, you do get 4 sets of soft tires this year instead of just 3. And so this is definitely a track where if you invalidate your hot lap, you can definitely get into the pits, put a new set on, and go back out. Unless there's a late safety car, you're not really going to be using those softs in the actual race. And so it's a good chance for you to maximize all the sets that you have during quali, especially if you feel like you're not on a quality lap or you do invalidate early, you can get to the pits.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that in normal dry running, you're most likely looking at some combination of hard medium or medium hard. The soft tire, you can just about stretch a hard soft or a soft hard, but I think the pace degradation of those soft tires after just a couple of laps, it doesn't make it particularly viable.
Yeah, as we watch Callum here sneak around, I haven't really paid too much close attention to where Callum has been this season. When I commentated last season in Division 4, he really had a great season. A few unfortunate circumstances, I think, during a few of the races, but presented a lot of speed. did have really good consistency as well. So we'll be excited to see what he has to offer today, even though I will be dropping out just a little bit early, but we'll be excited to come back and see where Callum has ended up.
Yeah, most definitely. Last season, he was kind of just behind the lead pack. Always was about a race win or so out of touching distance to really getting into the fight, but was always there to pick up the pieces. And, with just a couple extra tenths, could have been fighting for the race wins. Zados is coming through the final chicane here, was almost on level with Lazzo's best time set. And they will cross the line and do end up just a little bit slower in that third sector. Go into the 28.2. So thus far in this one, as we're creeping up on the halfway point, Lazzo's the only one to set a time in those 27s.
Yeah, the 27s are definitely a respectable time. I mean, we're seeing False Tax Division 1 here at the low 28s. I do think there's probably a little extra speed in that from Lazzo and the others. The Silverstone really grips up, and you'll be able to notice that right here. And we have the lovely graphic on the screen here for the throttle pedal. The track really grips up and cops, and you can start to take that almost flat in the second half of quali, where in the front half you definitely need a little lift. So we'll start to see the track grip up, and with that a little extra speed through those high-speed corners, which should have some of these times tumbling. But this is a very respectable lap here from Kane. I think Kane is one of our actual full-time Division R runners. Very clean lap, keeping the car nicely along the racing line as we come here. Now in the club, getting the car slowed down, misses the apex just a little bit, but pulls the car back to the right and is able to get back onto the throttle to cross the start-finish line. So I think this will be a somewhat competitive lap for him.
A decent lap from Kane. They were a PlayStation Division runner last season, and they've made the switch over to PC. Didn't have quite as much data on them at the start, and they had some collisions with some of the weekend race times, so they became a full-time Division reserve. But they're definitely honing their craft and getting dialed in, and I would expect probably a season 7, a good full-time seat, and should be a decently competitive driver as well once they get up to consistency and speed, and it is both of those things.
Yeah, we're seeing Pothaman here beginning Sector 2 through Maggots and Beckett's. Pothaman is one I think that has always had a lot of speed and has been just kind of on the benchmark of quickness, as we see the two McLarens here in formation. Not sure that they're trying to give each other a tow a little far away, but Pothaman, yellow Sector 2, so this probably isn't going to be one of the best laps unless they had an absolutely storming first sector. So we'll see how they finish when they come across the line. I do think probably a little more speed than where they are right now, currently in 12th with a 130. Coming out of club onto the straight there. Just a little bit improvement, I think, but not too much.
Yeah, and another very quick driver that we'll jump on board with, of course, Dog, who has yet to set a valid lap time, is coming up on the back of a Williams that I think they caught at a bad time. Don't think they were held up too much from the onboard. It looks like they just about got it rotated. And here's Dog goes up into the 28.3, so near that top. Lazzo is on a lap that they have not gone personal best in the first sector, but they have gone purple in the middle sector. So we'll keep an eye on them as they are working their way around. And crosses does improve on their best lap. Goes to the mid 27, so 27.6, just extending that gap that drivers need to chase down.
Gali is another one from Division 2, a promo T from Division 3 that's done very well. I think has a lot of pace. Very good qualifier, actually. So we're gonna see as he crosses the line here in the low 128s, pops up to 5th place. So yeah, Gali is one that definitely has a lot of qualifying pace. Not to say there isn't race pace there, but typically I think qualifies towards the front half of the grid here as Wilco nearly invalidates but manages to stay on track. Hits the first apex, is going to get the car circled back to the right here and on the throttle to cross the start finish, although I don't think this will be an entirely competitive lap, 14th, but is a lap on the board nonetheless.
Yeah, and speaking of Gali, he's a long-time Xbox Division driver, so I spent a lot of time racing against him. I mean, since his promotion up to Division 2, as Falstax appears to go up to the 27/8. So just a little bit of improvement in time, not many improvements in position. Stark will be around the corner next, but Gali has put in 2 top 5 finishes since their promotion up to Div 2, and having raced them for a long time in the Xbox division, they are a consistent driver on race pace as well. They make very few mistakes. They may not be the most aggressive wheel-to-wheel fighter, but they tend to drive their own race and turn in good result after good result as a result of it. So they're definitely a driver that, as much as I'm sure they would love to be running right at the sharp end of Division 3 and have it a little easier, I think they are a driver that will be fighting for podiums in Div 2 race in, race out before this season is done.
Agreed. And, Division 2 is a lot more competitive, I think, than what the standings might say. I know I'm at the top, but, looking at even last race, I managed to sneak onto the top step of the podium just on track limits alone. I won the first race, but then, wasn't on the podium the following 2. So it's really quite a competitive division, and Gali is right up there with the top runners. So great addition to the grid in Division 2. And another one here is Dr. Zados, who is another promotee from Division 3 and Division 2, has already taken a win in the division, sets a purple second sector, or that might be the sector bug. But Zados has a ton of speed and has actually finished ahead of me on track in the last 2 races on merit. So very, very fast driver, very clean as well. Really enjoyed racing with him. And we'll see where he crosses the line here in comparison to Lazzo, who is now in the mid-127s with a very respectable time. 1/10 off is Zados into P2.
Not just 1/10 off, it's about a half a tenth off, a 6.73.726. So it is very close with Dr. Zados up there, who is turning in very good laps. But yeah, another, like you say, promotee from Division 3. Much like Gali, probably initially placed a little bit low, but are definitely going to be fighting for those race wins, and it's going to get fairly crowded at the top there in Division 2, especially as the season wears on and you start to get to the tail end, and we'll see how these drivers can adapt to the newer tracks that are coming up, because as you mentioned in the pre-show, we've had a pretty FRS standard kind of opening to the season, a lot of familiar tracks, but we get to go to some tracks we haven't experienced a little bit later, and I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that we've got some Gali fans in the chat here. So he's made his reputation known across the league. And Angelo Civic is just around coming out of snow. Unfortunate timing there. And it looks like Dog maybe is going to drive through him, or Seriton. But Angelo Civic was Division 4 last year and really didn't find his pace, I think, until the last couple of races. So a little bit more experience under his belt now. We're seeing 10th on the grid here, ahead of some of those that have been in the league for quite a long time. So really, I can't speak highly enough of most of the runners, within FRS and the effort they put in and week out to get prepared for races and on the grid, and for the most part, some really great racing so far this season.
Yeah, there's definitely been some good fights up and down the field. It's thinned out a little bit in some of the lower ranks because of drivers getting promoted, but there's still been some good action in PC Division 3, PC Division 4 so far. As Dog is going to set a personal best on the first sector. We'll actually grab the onboard and see how they do, getting beyond by the car ahead, who has just bailed completely off. That's one of the McLarens, so they've gotten out of the way quite nicely. And you've got to find a little bit of time to get up there with the provisional pole sitter of Lazzo. Everybody out on what will be essentially their last runs, and looks like Lazzo just doing his outlap now, maybe one of the last to set a flying lap. To see how Dog is at this next sector split. About 2/10 off of Lazzo's ultimate pace through those first 2 sectors. 2 personal bests though, so they're in a good position to move up the field. We'll see how they can navigate through Stowe. They're coming up again on the back of another car just as they approach the Vale chicane. That's twice now they've been looking at the rear wing of a car about to start their flying lap. And I have to believe that's probably cost them half a tenth, and around they go. So, not ideal for Dog, so they will pirouette their way out of the way. There's a few drivers.
Yeah, it's really
crossing the
unfortunate for
line.
Dog. That was a fantastic lap, and I do think that their run out of Maggots and Beckett's onto the Hangar Straight was going to give them quite a bit of speed, and almost had a little bit of tow from that AlphaTauri in front of them. So I was looking forward to watching Dog move up the leaderboard there, but no traction control, bites again.
Yeah, there's Callum invalidates, was on a 2 green sector lap. Gully's going to be the next one coming through. Stowe here has 2 green sectors to their name. Lazzo at the back there setting a purple sector 1. And so we'll see how, keep an eye on the timing bars there. Has just gone about half a tenth quicker than their previous lap. Gully's going to cross the line, go to the 27.9, so a good improvement there, up to P4. I think Renovation will be the next car across the line, working their way through the last couple of corners. Has not improved in the middle sector, does not improve at the tail end. Lazzo next around. Seemed to leave a little bit on the table as far as track, but goes to a 27.5 to just extend that pole position. And I think it's going to be just about it. A couple of yellow sectors. Pathaman 1.3 off through the first 2 sectors, so likely not going to contend. False Tax crosses the line, goes to a 27.8, so no improvement there. They'll stay P3.
Yeah, I think that wraps up a pole position for Lazzo, and Zados is going to join him on the side of the grid, or on the front row of the grid, rather. And Zados with that medium traction control is an absolutely rapid starter, so we might see him lead into turn 1.
Stark has jumped up to
very
P3
nice lap
with his
from
last
Stark.
lap there.
Yeah, Stark hooked that one up, that's for sure. So Stark now, second row of the grid, will start on the outside there. I believe the outside there from behind Mazzo. So
Yeah, very improves on his last lap as well. Goes into the 28, so up to P9 now. But pretty much everybody across the line.
Yeah, I'd say a great qualifying. We really saw the track evolution come into play. A lot of times really dwindled from just Lazzo into the 27s, so now we've got 5 runners all in the 27s. So great qualifying, but with that, I'm going to take a back seat and head out and watch the race alone. So hate to leave you in the virtual commentary box by yourself, Quimby, but was a pleasure at least commentating beside you for quality and the pre-race.
All good. Yeah, much appreciated for helping me survive the pre-race as we had the long delay. But go enjoy watching the race, and then we will see you on track a little bit later this weekend.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
So here is your qualifying order. Lazzo takes that pole position. Of course, Dr. Zados P2 on the front row. Stark jumps up to 3rd. Late, False Tax, and Gali round out your top 5. Ruprath, Dog, Riemann, Angelo Civic, and Renovatio make up your top 10. Pathaman shares the next row with Callum, Brad Spit, and Wilco in P13 and 14. And then Kane and Sarrington round out the running order. But we will get ready as the drivers get ready to dial in their strategies and hopefully not hit go too soon on this one. And we'll get ready to rock and roll. And then we'll actually get the final say on what the weather we're expecting to look like. And there is some rain. I usually like to leave the hold screen on, but we'll just go ahead and bring that up. It's pouring. It's absolutely chucking it down. So we are going to definitely have an interesting race in this one. So Yag, congratulations. Your rain dance has indeed worked. I hope you're happy with yourself. The drivers are just about getting their final bits loaded in. It's going to be appears to be a rainy one throughout. We will see. Put to the test, as Coral did say in some of his test running, that wet weather is a little bit more fightable in the 2022 game. Hopefully we'll see some more action in this one. Of course, drivers are on very different paces, and drivers can make some mistakes that put them right to the back of the field. So we will see who can keep their car pointed the right direction, who can be quick, and who can overtake in this one. I believe we have a broadcast formation lap coming up. Yeah, we do indeed. So I'm going to just make Crofty be a little bit quiet. Everybody's on intermediate tires, so it's not quite to full wet conditions this time. But we will see as how drivers can get their temperatures into the tires and warmed up. And we'll get ready for the start of this one. Should be pretty much a one-stop, depending on if the weather holds as it does. As drivers get ready to form up on the grid, we'll bring the game audio back in and get ready for the start of this one as that Williams parks it on pole. The Red Bull you'd expect to be, but two Williams up in the front two rows, so we will see how those drivers can get on with each other. So, lights are up. 3, 4, 5 red lights, and we wait for them to go down. And we are getting off the line. It looks like Zados has gotten a very good start, as has Stark. They are shooting past, as has False Tax. So Lazzo from P1 down to P5. Drivers working their way. We have a driver kind of way off the circuit in the back. It looks like Riemann now looking to gobble up Lazzo now. Angelo Civic is getting involved with the fight. Ooh, a bit of an avoiding action from the Red Bull as they opened up the steering. Oh, and around goes Dr. Zados. A little bit too much right foot in that one, and around they go on the exit of the corner. There's some scrapping away as Angelo Civic has gotten a very good run through that corner, and is now going to overtake Riemann. Riemann a little bit later on the brakes around the outside. Can they make their way as Ruprath is starting to get their nose involved in this fight side by side, tucked up behind the Red Bull, trying to sneak their way through. A decent run coming through as they're going to have to just dip out of that fight, and that Aston Martin has gotten a very, very good run. An issue for Ruprath, maybe. They've dropped right down the field. As wide goes Angelo Civic through Cops. Off the track they go, and that's going to cost them a huge amount of momentum. They're going to be under attack from Callum now into Maggins and Beckett's. No, they've just managed to hold on to that position. Sarrington and Patherman getting it sorted out before the end, but Stark is leading this race from False Tax. Gali in P3. We'll keep an eye on this fight up at the front now, though, for the podium position, as Lazzo is just a couple of tenths behind Gali in P4. Angelo Civic and Riemann fighting, just as Angelo Civic well off the track has gone a little bit too deep. Don't know if there was contact between the two, but away they go and drop a couple of places down. Now Brad Spit and Dog are dueling a little bit, but it looks like they've got it just about sorted out. There's quite a lot of fighting going on. Trying to find a good angle for this battle is a little bit of wheel spin from Kane there. That's going to cost them quite a bit of time to the car ahead. And Sarrington really struggling to keep the car on track already. That track limits 3 warnings already in this one. We'll grab this fight with Callum and I believe that is Riemann side by side. Ruprath side by side they are going. Yellow flag now through this slow sector. It looks like that is Sarrington who's gone around. And I think Callum has just about gotten the job done from Ruprath there. So now they can set their sights ahead to Riemann in the Red Bull. As the front few are starting to space out just a little bit, but this mid-pack is dueling away rather significantly. Ruprath taking the wider line to try and carry a little momentum. So we're seeing drivers now experimenting with some different lines to try and get runs where they can. Coming down the old pit straight, here comes Callum, Ruprath, and Angelo Civic. And it looks like Callum has gotten a very good run on Riemann. Are they going to be able to get clear into Maggins and Beckett? Side by side they go through the switchbacks, leaving just enough space. And it looks like Callum has snuck their way through. And now Ruprath is going to try and have a bit of an attack there at Riemann. And that is going to drag Angelo Civic through. He's got tons of momentum. Goes 2 wheels onto the grass. Has to back out as they've kind of run out of space. 3 wide into Stowe. Oh, surely that's going to end in tears. A little contact between Riemann and Angelo Civic as they got bundled up, and that is Angelo Civic around just 3 into 2. Not enough space left. I don't think anyone really knew that it was about to be 3 wide, but a massive bit of an incident there, as it looks like Pathaman is bouncing a little bit, but Stark setting fastest lap of the race, leading from False Tax, Gali, and then Lazzo now looking to dive up the inside. Lazzo not quite getting it. He's now going to try and open the angle and carry some momentum. He's got a very good release there, although Gali getting the traction down and has actually just about equalized that opening of the steering wheel. So All even Stevens as it comes through there. The battle for the final points paying position. Angelo Civic, Pathman, Renovatio, all running line astern, and they are starting to catch up to Dog in P9 in the Haas as well. So still lots and lots of fighting in this one. False Tax just teasing that 1 second margin from Stark. We may keep an eye out as they might get an opportunity to try and take that race lead away from Stark, but golly, about 3 seconds back has Lazzo for company. But of course, with the wet conditions, no DRS helping out with these moves. And now Angelo Civic is starting to look ahead to Dog, getting closer and closer. The margin now between Angelo Civic and Dog is closer than between them and Hatherman. They just tease it through in the wet conditions. It's a tough track to navigate. Stark, I believe, might have made a bit of a mistake as False Tax is all over the gearbox of Stark now. We'll grab this fight for the lead of the races. Oh, there might just about have been contact there. I think False Tax nearly got the car slowed down enough. I think they've avoided any kind of contact. But False Tax setting fastest lap of the race, quicker than Stark. And that is how they've closed up. Ruprecht, though, goes faster even still, a 41.7 in these wet conditions. Now, this is one of the tightest battles on track. Of course, keeping an eye, Lazzo and Callum and Gali all still fighting it out. And of course, Dog, Angelo Civic is another battle that is very close. We'll have to see. I think Stark's got just about the straight line advantage over False Tax. But False Tax may have the moves in the corners, and they might be able to close it up in those more traction-heavy zones. As, yeah, you can see, closes the delta down to where they're running almost nose to tail. But then Stark getting the release off the corner as they head now down into Cops. Will grab the onboard. We'll see how they handle the wet weather. There's a little dab of brakes down into 6th gear, and then tracing out using the momentum and the full width of the track there. Now coming through Maggots and Beckett's, usually flat through the first section, a little lift through the second, and then a dab of brakes. Dabs of brakes all around for this one as it gets very dicey in these wet conditions. It looks like False Tax has got that overtake on there, starting to close up to the back of Stark, but not quite close enough to make a full-on attack. Now getting the power down, easing onto the throttle out of stow. It looks like False Tax just has a little bit better performance through stow than what Stark is able to provide at the moment, and just kind of is whoever can get the traction nailed down out of the Vale chicane. Renovatio picks up a 3-second track limits penalty as unsurprisingly runs a little bit wide. A brake and a downshift for turn 1 as Stark retakes that fastest lap of the race, but not by much because False Tax is all over the back of them. We'll keep an eye on the timing tower as this fight continues to go on because Lazzo and Callum are now fighting it out side by side, and that's going to be an error. Oh, a little bit of wheel spin as Lazzo gets a snap of oversteer and contact between them and Callum. Looks like they've avoided any kind of major spin as Callum is going to slot back ahead of Ruprecht there, but very close to a big incident there. It looks like they just sort of got it figured out. Down the inside, Callum is going to make an attempt on Lazzo, quite going to come off. Ruprecht using that wide line through Luffield, trying to use the momentum to make a run down into Stowe, and I think that's Cups, and that's going to cause Callum to really have to burn some battery to hold Ruprecht up into Cups. A little look to the inside, not one significant enough to make much of a difference, but Callum showing some very good pace, trying to close up to Lazzo. Just needs to get that move done, but it has bought Gali about 1.4 seconds of breathing space now. Ruprecht is also making this job very difficult for Callum because as soon as Callum steps off the racing line to try and have a little bit of a look on Lazzo, Ruprecht is just about there to take over that track position as well. So it makes it very hard for Callum to return to the track, return to the racing line if a move doesn't quite come off. But looks like they're all pretty much even Stevens as False Tax sets another fastest lap of the race out in the front. They are really pushing the pace. Are those top two drivers 5.6 seconds now clear of Gali, and Callum once again gets a good run out of club, but is not going to be quite there to attack, using that extra momentum, going a little bit wide before they head down into the loop. And once again, line astern are the three drivers. Ruprath again, a little bit wide that time of the apex. That's going to cost them some time. That's not quite the same as taking a wide line and apexing later for momentum. Looks like they've just run a little bit deep of the apex that time, and now Riemann is starting to get within that 1 second margin of Ruprath, so they might be getting involved in this fight relatively soon. We'll jump back up to the front as False Tax is back at around 0.4 of a second to Stark. Dog picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple track limits warnings now. And Zados, after spinning on lap 1, has not been able to really recover at the tail end of the field. Believe they've already had to make a pit stop for damage as well, and are going to have quite the job ahead of them to try and get back. They need a safety car at this point. They need a safety car, and that is Seritin around in the final sector, but they've gotten moving once again. And False Tax closer than ever as they head down to Stowe. Stark defends the inside. False Tax sweeps to the outside. Is he going to have the momentum to go for it? It looks like he's got the nose ahead. That's not the camera angle we need. Stark going to re-attack down the inside into the Vale chicane. A little bit of extra curbing there. And False Tax has gotten that move done on Stark. Although Stark back up underneath on the inside. Side by side they go. And just about side by side they continue to go. Stark is going to take that position. And I believe False Tax went all 4 wheels off on the outside and was likely told by the game to yield that position, but instantly re-attacks. Now down the inside of the loop, late on the brakes he goes, and Stark once again trying to open up the angle, get the up and under done. He's going to run out of road a little bit there, not enough of the car alongside to claim space, but now are we going to see that straight line speed that we expect Stark has in the re-attack? And now down the inside into Brooklyn's, and well wide of the apex is False Tax, who again is off the track. Angelo Civic picking up a 3-second time penalty. So False Tax may be getting themselves into a bit of track limits trouble by trying to run wide and carry some momentum with the hot pressure of Stark. But we'll keep an eye now down on this battle for the top 5 positions as Callum has dropped a little bit off the back of Latzo, down to about a second the gap, but Ruprath still right there. Half a second is the margin, as similar to what Stark has on False Tax ahead. So Stark is about to head down a next big straight. But I think with 0.7 of a second, the margin is going to be a little bit too far for them to make any kind of impression on an overtaking ability down into Stowe this time. So False Tax finally getting ahead. It looks to be staying ahead this time. But Riemann now closing up on the back of Ruprath and is going to try and make a move for themselves here. Through Stowe they go, but not quite enough to attack. Riemann gets a better exit. It's closing up by a couple of tenths, but still that 2.5 tenths is not going to be enough to get their nose alongside and really challenge genuinely for that position. So it is all even Stevens as we hit lap 8 of this race. False Tax leads from Stark, Golly, Latzo, Callum, Ruprath, Riemann, Braspit, Dog, and Angelo Civic makes up your top 10. Looks like False Tax starting to stretch their legs a bit. That margin staying at about that 1 second point between Stark and False Tax, so not able to close the gap too much anymore. And it may be that False Tax just has a slightly better setup for these wet conditions. But there's still plenty of dueling being done as much as drivers were upset about the wet conditions. I believe Coral was dead on that you can indeed fight a little bit more in the damp conditions here at Silverstone compared to the last game. It's still not as easy to fight as if you had DRS in dry conditions, but we are seeing drivers being able to at least get the nose up alongside, try and duke it out for position. And speaking of duking it out for position, we'll grab Dog, who has shown very good pace already, but is kind of in the field now, really chewing into Brad Spitt's margin. So we may have a battle for position coming up in just a moment here, as it looks like Dog has eaten up about 1.5 nearly 2 tenths in a matter of a couple of corners, and they are bringing Angelo Civic along, who is right on about that 1 second mark here in these intermediate conditions. Now you can see the nose of Dog's car very much picking up the spray as False Tax, now unleashed, goes into the 1 minute 40s in these intermediate conditions, and Stark losing ground to Gali now. The gap 4.2 seconds after it was as high as 5.6 a couple of laps ago. But Dog a little bit slower through the first couple of corners there and down the main straight, but they've carried very good momentum now heading into the loop. And look at that, they are getting all over the gearbox of Brad Spitt ahead. We may have an opportunity for Dog to try and take a race position here in just a moment. Left-handed kink to get on to the Wellington straight. No DRS open, of course. But closing. Are they gonna? They're not gonna be close enough to make a move, but you can get a good run through Brooklands and Luffield, and it looks like Dog has nailed the apex through Brooklands a little better. Luffield, it seems to be about even Stevens getting on the throttle. If anything, Brad Spitt a little bit better getting that power down, and is just going to be able to hold the gap to Dog here in 9th now. Callum still threatening the range of Latzo ahead, but not quite in real genuine attack. But here we are through Maggots, Beckett's, and they've caught right up onto the back of, I believe that is the back marker of Seriton. So they are going to be getting the blue flags. The ghosted car, they will just drive straight on there. Oh, and around goes Brad Spitt. So before a battle could even start, Brad Spitt has lost the rear of the car. They've managed to, it appears, keep it out of the barriers, so they are still alive, and now Latzo is closing up on Gully. So, 9 laps of this 26-lap race done as Falstaff sets another fastest lap of the race, improving even further. And now we are going to have a battle for the podium positions as Gully is gradually working their way into the margin on Stark, now 4.1 seconds, but Latzo is going to be right there to try and take that podium away from Gali, that P3 position. Gali a little wide on the exit of the first portion of the loop there. Kane picks up a 3-second time penalty, and now is really going to compromise Gali's run. You can see the momentum that Latzo had at the start, but it looks like Gali a little bit better in the second traction phase there, and has gotten a bit of a launch better off of that corner. So the margin goes back up to 0.6 of a second. And we continue. It looks like Latzo may have a slight advantage under braking, and Gali might have a slight edge under traction. Although, as I say that, Latzo gets a slightly better exit out of left field this time and is now closing that gap down little by little. Callum is starting to get into the margin where they will fight for this race position as well. We're closing up on the halfway point of the race, and we'll see when drivers opt to switch on to another set of intermediate tires. Now, I don't know. Can the Inters go the entire race distance? Because it is a wet track, they are not bound by the 2-tire compound rule nor the 1 mandatory pit stop rule. If you can keep a set of intermediates from blowing up the entire race distance, you can just drive a set of intermediates all the way to the end of this race. So we'll see if any drivers opt for that. We'll grab the weather report as it stands. It is supposed to stay light rain throughout. Maybe a chance of it lightening up a little bit further, but it doesn't appear to be any kind of expectation of the rain going away and fully drying up, and likely not going to see any slick tire running in this one. The gap at the front now nearly 4 seconds as Stark is about midway between themselves, or Falstaff and Gali now. It's about even Stevens there, as Latzo is still trying to take that 3rd place away from the Alpine driver. It's a little tentative on the throttle that time around, and Gali will once again open the gap up a little bit. Stark's still trying to make some headway, but Falstaff's really pacing the field this time around. We'll grab a battle we expect to develop. Dog and Riemann now closing up as Dog is working their way back through the field after invalidations kept them from really putting in an ideal lap as was that spin. Dog should be on, pace-wise, a top 5 finisher in this race, but they've got to try and work their way through the field. They're up to 8th place now after an early incident had dropped them down, so they're kind of dialing their way back through. Callum, the big gainer, 7 positions up in this one, up into 5th. And Zados, of course, from the front row, or second row rather. No, front row. He was P2 all the way down to 15. So a tough day at the office there. We'll grab this fight here as Callum sweeping around the outside of Latzo. Looks like he's going to manage to snag that position. Nope, fighting back they go. Falstaff continues to push as hard as they can. I would love to be able to see where Latzo is, as Ruprath now getting involved with the fight side by side. They go out of the final corner. It looks like Lazzo's got the momentum on this one, but Callum has made their way through, and that is going to once again give Gali a little bit of breathing room. Every time Lazzo seems to be dialing up a strong attack on Gali, the cars behind start to catch up, and they start to dice with those, and now Gali's got himself a 2.5 second cushion once again. Stark now 5 seconds back. Gali 3.9, so still edging in to that margin of the race leader. Dog is closing back up. We will attempt to grab a good angle for Dog. He'll just grab the onboard while the game cameras are a little bit wonky. Oh, nearly nose-to-tail contact with Riemann there. Dog is just going to have to be a little bit patient through these corners. He's definitely got the pace over Riemann under braking and through cornering, but has to avoid making any kind of mistake and making any kind of contact with the car ahead. Lazzo still within that 0.6 of a second margin. We'll keep an eye on that interval just in case it changes and that battle gets spicy, but it seems to be growing more than it's closing significantly. So we'll stay on this fight here between Dog and Riemann. As Dog tries to work their way back up to their original starting position of 7th in this race. Lots of drivers picking up time penalties as False Tax again goes quicker, nearly getting down into the 139. So I don't think False Tax is thinking about a pit stop anytime soon for some fresh rubber. It seems to be doing quite well as they hit the halfway mark. 13 laps of 26. False Tax leads from Stark, and Gali rounds out the podium places. Callum in 4th with Lazzo in 5th, Ruprath in 6th, Riemann in 7th. In this battle here, 8th for Dog. Angelo Civic is in 9th, and Renovatio is in P10, the last of the points paying positions, and has a fair margin to Brad Spit behind in P11. The Dog is dropping off the back of the fight just a little bit. We'll switch it up. We'll go to this top 5 battle. It would be a fight for P4, but Stark has picked up a 3-second time penalty. But I also think that Gali might have made a mistake. The interval for Gali had gone from about 3 seconds to 4.6, so I believe Gali has had a bit of an off there. Maybe not fully off, but a snap of oversteer, had to lift big. Doesn't appear to have cost them too much in this battle behind, still about 2.3 seconds. But as far as their attacks for second place in this one, not quite coming off just yet. They'll have to get back up to speed and see how they do. They seem to be falling off a little bit. We'll keep an eye on them. Have they had an issue with a tire? They're dropping a fair bit of time. Nope, seems to be all inflated. And unfortunately, I missed the move as Ruprath snuck by Lazzo through Maggots and Beckett's. My mistake, guys. Poor TV direction from me. But I expect that this battle will indeed continue. False Text continuing to set fast laps. We'll actually grab this Dog Riemann battle as it is very close. And it looks like Riemann into the pit lane. So Riemann, the first of the runners to blink and grab a new set of tires at the midway point of this race, lap 14. So Dog will be free and unleashed. Renovatio will follow them into the pits. So another driver coming in to get another set of boots in this one. So we'll go back to the Callum Ruprath Lazzo fight, as they are the closest cars on track to one another. Dog starting to close their way up to this fight. 2.5 seconds the margin at this stage. Now down to 2.3. As it looks like Wilco in the McLaren has come in, as has Kane. So a couple more drivers opting for that extra pit stop. Or for the pit stop, the one and only that we would expect in this race, as it is expected the weather will stick around. Yellow flags in Sector 2, right at split of Sector 2 and 3. That is Seritin, I believe, that has gone around again. It is definitely not Callum, the other Alpha Tauri that is in this train right here. Ruprath just needs to try and get up to the back of Callum to try and attack, as Gali is lost now down. It's down to 1.7 seconds ahead of Callum, 5.3 now the gap, as it looks like a mistake from Seritin trying to get into the pit lane as well. But Ruprath all over the gearbox of Callum on the exit of Maggots and Beckett's. Looks like, though, on straight line speed, not able to deploy and get quite into an overtaking opportunity. So they will once again go around and settle in. Has anybody? Yes. So Ruprath going to come in for the pit lane. Get it slowed down. It's the slower than you would think pit lane speed. Stark is in. Ruprath is in. Lazzo is in. And Dog is in as well, so there's a double stack going on as False Tax will continue on. Let's actually see how they handle the double stack. Is it going to be a decent double stack from the Haas crew? Or will Dog get caught out in this one? One of those where you'd want to box opposite your teammate to avoid being held up, and he is going to be held up. There's the wait, there's the switch, so it is an extra bit of time for Dog in the pit lane with that double stack. Ruprath is going to come out just relatively close, I believe, to Stark. So they're starting to close up on Stark. We'll see if Stark can turn in some good lap times with these fresh intermediate tires. Of course, the intermediates don't have to heat up quite as much to be in their optimal range. In fact, they are probably out of the blankets, the 70 degrees Celsius that they get. They might actually be just up to optimal temperature right about there. So the usual outlap woes that cars have on the dry compounds may not be such a big issue, but we'll grab this fight here. Riemann and Latzo, nose to tail, continuing to battle. About half a second the margin between them. We'll keep an eye on Callum as they're starting to close up on Gali, and we'll see if anybody at the front is going to opt for that pit stop as well. It looks like False Tax has indeed continued on, although I can't tell based on the color blue dots that are there. There's too many blue dots, and I'll complain about it every week. Riemann and Latzo, your closest battle on track for P7 and P8. Gali and Callum are into the pit lanes, so False Tax still continuing on. Now, is this a situation where Stark may be able to undercut and close the gap at least to False Tax? Now, False Tax is going to come out with with a tire differential. They're going to have a little bit healthier tires in the last couple of laps, but I don't think that'll be as big of an issue. But having a brand new set of tires on will be around. I believe that's Dog. I think that might be. It is indeed. Dog has spun on the exit of Stowe and is carrying on now, but all the work to try and close back up, and again, now going to find themselves in a bit of trouble. Grab the gap to the leaders. Angelo Civic, 21 seconds off of False Tax. 39 the margin between False Tax and Stark. So we will have to see if it is going to be. I think that would be significantly too much for an undercut to get anywhere close to. I think even in wet conditions, the pit loss will be closer to 33, 35 seconds, a little bit longer because the cars are going slower. Or actually, no, it would be shorter because the cars are going slower at race speed, and you're staying the same. Into the pits goes False Tax. You will see now, and keep an eye on how they compare to where Stark is. Angelo Civic yet to make a stop. False Tax making their stop, so it's the last two drivers to make their pit stops. And I think we've got a battle brewing between Ruprath and Gali now. So for the net final podium position, as Angelo Civic will likely drop behind this fight when they make their stop. And looking at the green dot on the map, they have indeed carried on. Ruprath, a very good exit out of Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel. They're going to have a little look to the inside of Stowe. No, they've tucked back in. They're going to settle and not go. But False Tax returning to racing speed, gets back out on the track, and is going to have quite the margin. Side by side goes Ruprath and Gali into the Vale chicane now through Club. Gali has the inside line. Stark, though, sets a fastest lap of the race. So his fresh tires definitely working, but they're still going to be a good 10, 12 seconds behind False Tax. So not quite the pace they need. 9.6 seconds the margin. Ruprath up the inside. Gali looking to cover the inside, not able to get the car turned in with Ruprath there. And now nose to tail they go, duking it out for the final podium position in this one. And now Gali, after having run in clean air for much of this race, has got some work to do to try and get that race position back from Ruprath. Switching it up, looking inside, outside. Gali trying to find a place to put their nose to get some car alongside to battle it out. But it looks like Ruprath this time has it covered. Now Callum, Latzo, Riemann all getting involved now. You can see it's turning into quite the duel and the train. One misstep from Gali and they could find themselves not only not fighting for the podium, they could be finding themselves nearly out of the top 10 as the tail end of the train here, Riemann, is in P8. Now keep an eye on the green dot as it comes around the final couple of corners. Do they opt for the pit lane? No, Angelo Civic has once again stayed out. So, staying out one more time. And Golly losing ground to Ruprath and now losing ground to Callum. It looks like Ruprath might just be in a position to run away with P3 in this one. A little look to the inside from Callum, but no, they've backed their nose out of that one, not going for the move. This train continues to build a bit, as Latzo and Riemann all involved with this one as well, trying to find their way up through the field, try and take that race position away from Golly this time. But Golly is starting to close back up to Ruprath. It was 1.1 seconds. I think Ruprath has had a little bit of wheel spin through the final corner, as they've lost about 0.3 of a second to Golly. They're starting to get back up to pace, but Golly's still going to have an opportunity maybe to close back up and re-attack for their podium place in this one. But as it stands, your net leader of the race, False Tax, out in front by 10.6 seconds. Ruprath, or ahead of Stark rather, and Ruprath is in net P3 position. Golly, Callum, and Latzo and Riemann make up your next train, and Angelo Civic still yet to pit. I think if I look at the gap, they should come out somewhere just ahead, likely, of Riemann. Now, of course, this battling between Callum, Golly, and Latzo is side by side. Oh, it looks like there was contact. I think Latzo may have just gathered it up through cops there. So they've dropped off the back there, but it looks like they have managed to avoid a big shunt. But Stark carrying that 3-second time penalty needs this fight between Golly and Ruprath to continue to keep Ruprath from closing up on this group. We've got 8 laps left to go in this one. Lap 19 now of 26. And False Tax goes once again in control of this race. Fastest lap. They got a pretty poor start off of pole position there. Had to work their way back through the field. But once they got clear of Stark, they rather rapidly gapped the field and now have quite the comfortable margin. In fact, they've nearly caught up to Angelo Civic now and may even take this position away on track before Angelo even comes into the pit lane. But as much as Golly's looking forward, Golly's also got to be checking their mirrors, as it's about a similar margin ahead and behind, about 0.9 of a second. Callum going to be trying to look their way through. Riemann has dropped back to 1.1, but we'll grab Latzo as they are actually now starting to close into an attacking position on the Red Bull of Riemann. So some close battles in this one. Moves have come on and moves have come off, and there's been some side-by-side contact. I think you do need to be a little bit more careful, but still some decent fighting even in these wet conditions. It's better than what we saw in the last game. Now, granted, some of that may be because of the pace differential some of these drivers, but this solidly Division 2, Division 3 pace pack, Ruprath, Golly, Callum, Riemann, and of course Latzo involved as well, has shown some pretty good fight throughout this entire race so far. Dog is starting to work their way back up to the back end of Renovatio. We'll go ahead and, at the end of this straight, we'll grab that fight, as I think that is going to turn into a potential scrap in just a moment. A good run for Latzo down the hanger straight, but not quite close enough to make a move come off. We'll grab Dog in the Haas, trying to close up to the back of Renovatio and rectify the mistake, the spin that they had earlier. Of course, Dog, very quick driver, but consistency has been the struggle for them. They could be nearly Division 2 championship pace, but they've had some high-profile mistakes in this one that have kept them from being genuinely in the fight. And False Tax is actually about to take this race lead away on merit. Now, Angelo Civic at this point, curious what their tire life is at. According to the rules, they don't have to make a pit stop. They can indeed try and go the entire race. We'll actually grab this battle here if we can, Riemann and Latzo, but no. Couldn't quite come off. We'll grab False Tax as they make their way, attempt to make their way past Angelo Civic through cops, and there they go. So easy move is just about done there. But Angelo Civic, if they've managed their tires and, treated them nicely, it's a 13-second gap back to Stark with only 7 laps left to go in this race. Is their pace good enough to keep Stark from chasing them down? They may no-stop their way into a podium. Oh, Latzo's lost the back into the barriers. He goes just front wing damage. I think he's just about managed to avoid a complete retirement, but it looked like side by side through Cops, the rear end got loose. Couldn't tell from this angle if there was any contact between the two. But, somebody is off near the front. I believe that is a Red Bull of Zados. Yes, Zados has gone off through the turns 1 and 2, has hit the wall, and unfortunately picked up a 10-second time penalty for running straight through that. So no front wing for Zados, no front wing for Lazzo, and that is just bad news for both of them. We'll grab this fight back up once again. Dog and Renovatio. Renovatio, one of the quicker drivers of Div 4. Dog, a quick driver in Div 2, but we will see if Dog has the legs in them to make it by to try and grab an extra couple of points. Penalties are abounding for drivers. We'll take a look. Dog and Renovatio, same amount, 3 seconds apiece. Looks like Lazzo's got that 3 seconds, though they may have that one removed because I believe they picked up that last warning while they were spinning off track. So that one might get removed. Same with Dr. Zados' instant 10-second penalty. As yellow flags up towards the midsection, we'll grab, I think it is getting dicey. There's a car a lap down, it looks like, trying to get out of the way of the battle between Ruprath, Gully, and Callum. We'll grab one in the pack there. And there are some yellow flags being thrown for the slow-moving, I believe that is both Zados and Lazzo. So both moving slowly. Gap between Stark and Angelo Civic, 12 seconds now. 12.3, so not quite closing up the gap as quick as he needs to try and take that position away. And Ruprath now for just 4.7 seconds off of the back of Stark. Now, notably, not carrying any time penalties. Stark with that 3-second time penalty, as Zados is just going to call it a day in the pit lanes after that late spin. A tough day from Zados from the front row. A lap 1 mistake had them spinning around, and then has not been able to get back up. Unfortunately, you would hope that drivers would be able to use PC Div R as a bit of a learning platform, but I don't think there was much value left for them to learn in this one. So a tough day for Dr. Zados. The fight between Dog and Renovatio remains the closest on the track, as it seems like every time Dog gets a little bit close to Renovatio, they have a little bit of a misstep and drop back to about 7-8 tenths and have to close back up once again. How close they can get to the rear end under braking. It seems like on power and under traction, it's not quite close enough. Now, is Angelo Civic going to be able to take it the rest of the way, as it looks like Wilco had a spin out of Cops this time, so that's a stopped orange dot of a McLaren, but back to racing speed they go. They've stayed out. Their teammate Pathaman is into the pit lane to grab a fresh set of boots and likely, never mind, retire from the session. Well, they've disconnected, but they have not retired. I think they might have done some things out of order there. They've been trying to retire the car in the pit lane, but that AI car is now going to trundle back out onto the road. And we will see if they have indeed hit the retirement button. Oh, snap of oversteer from Dog. Once again, was getting very close to an attacking position, but that snap of oversteer coming through Cops at back end, just getting a little light, cost them the momentum that they needed to attack into Maggots and Beckett's. Although a good run out of Chapel this time. With the overtake on, I think, in the slipstream. Are they going to be close enough? Renovatio just kind of picking a mid-ish line. Dog late on the brakes into Stowe, and they've gotten that pass finally done. Now, is Renovatio going to be able to re-attack? No, Renovatio a little bit too far back to try and make a lunge at Dog. And Dog up into P8 now after quite a lot of effort in this one. Lazzo and Kane fighting their way through Cops, and now into Maggots and Beckett. Side by side they go. A little bit of wheel banging as they're running out of space, trying to leave some space, and it is tricky conditions to do it in, but it looks like Lazzo has just about gotten that job done once again, although Kane looks to have gotten a modest release, but no, their delta is starting to increase, so they're dropping off just a little bit more. Renovatio still hanging on to the back of Dog, but I think that gap will just about open up too much. Ruprath now, 3.2 seconds, the gap to Stark. So, it's getting interesting as we get down to the podium places. Angelo Civic, if his tires do not explode, is on pace for a podium. We're going to grab some onboard from Angelo Civic to see how much, if how much they are trying to push this car around the track. Gentle turn in, easing onto the throttle. It looks like they are indeed kind of easing the car around. But they've got a 10-second margin to play with at this stage. Ruprath may be able to grab that third podium place off of Stark with that time penalty differential. Gali seems to be in a rather comfortable fourth, although Callum starting to try and get inside that 1 second margin to make a challenge for that position. But 3 laps to go. The margin, 9.9 seconds between Angelo Civic and Stark. And Angelo just tiptoeing through the corners. Surely those intermediate tires have to be getting into a dangerous territory at this stage of the race. Once they hit about 75% expected wear, that is when the tires will be in what is considered puncture territory. There's no fight, aside from the one between Dog and Renovatio, that is within 1 second, and that is just ticking outside of 1 second. However, as I say that, Callum is starting to nibble at that 1 second margin. You can see just how much deceleration there is to glide the car through Cops. Good amount of braking through Maggots, Beckett's, and now slowing the car down for Chapel. Just easing it through. Still 9 seconds the margin. So with just about 2 laps left to go in this one, Angelo Civic may no-stop their way to a podium position in this race. Yellow flags as a McLaren has gone around crossing the start-finish line. And that is Wilco around once again. Callum is closing up to the back of Gali now. Just 5/10 the gap, a half a second. So with only 1.5 laps or so left to, or 2 laps left to go in this race, Gali's got some work to do before the end. Trying to hang on to that top 5 finish for Gali in this one. They've had a couple of top 5 finishes since their promotion to PC Division 2. Now trying to make it another top 5 finish here in PC Division R. Ruprath has stretched their legs out right on about that 3 second margin though, 3.1 to Stark. So it is very nip and tuck, and Stark has actually lost some ground to Angelo Civic, back up to 10.1 seconds the gap between those two drivers. Sorry, 7.4 seconds is now the margin. I'm looking at Angelo's gap. So it is getting a little closer between Stark and Angelo, but with 2 laps left to go, he's going to need to find about 3.5 seconds a lap and make an overtake in order to get that job done. Ruprath still 3.4 seconds, and Gali and Callum side by side, and it looks like that is Dog around. Dog has had another spin coming out of the loop here, and that is Dog now back down to P9. I believe that's the 3rd spin of the day for Dog. Is another snap of oversteers. They're trying to get the power back down. Again, showing pace, but the mistakes creep in, and well wide of Cops goes Callum there. Carrying some extra momentum, I would guess, but they've actually lost some ground to Gali. So 1 second the margin now between these. Ruprath is now inside that 3 second gap to Stark. So he is poised to take over the podium position, but it's back outside of 3 seconds. False tax setting a new fastest lap of the race on the penultimate lap. Likely burned quite a bit of ERS to go for it. May be able to have some battery to go for one final lap, but it looks like that attack from Callum is just going to come up a little bit short for P5 against Gali. Unless there's any kind of mistake, I believe Gali may be able to work this one home. 1 second the margin, just needs to keep it clean and on the road. It's not easy to overtake. But around they go. MMO Ruprath now 2.8 seconds the gap to Stark. So they are in that provisional P3 position. We're actually going to find where on the road False Tex is out in the lead of this race. Already working their way through Brooklyn's left field, now through Cops. Just about a sector and a half to go in this race to take home the race win in PC Division R. 12 seconds the gap to Angelo Civic, and it is 6 seconds now back to Stark. So Angelo Civic, again, if those tires can stay intact, a no stop to a podium position in this one. So forget when I was saying net lead of the race earlier. It is a genuine position for Angelo Civic because they've just got a couple of corners left to navigate in this one to bring home a podium finish. But first, False Tax has just got 3 corners left to go. They work their way into the Vale chicane and out of the final corner of Club. He's on the throttle. If False Tax is going to cross the line. Oh, spin. 360 keeps it out of the wall across the line. And False Tax is your winner of the PC Division R British Grand Prix. Angelo Civic, the tires seem to all be still intact and is indeed going to no stop their way to a podium finish. Stark right on about that 3-second margin to Ruprath 2.9. They're going to cross the line now. Can Ruprath get inside? No, Ruprath by 0.5 of a second does not take the podium away from Stark. Gali next across the line with Callum close in tow for P5 and P6. That battle did indeed not come off. Riemann next across the line. Renovatio working their way through Club. Crosses the line now, P8. Dog will be next across the line to round out the 9th place position. And then we should have Brad Spitt for the top 10. However, they have 9 seconds worth of track limits penalties. However, again, 18 seconds the gap to Latzo, who's had a tough day. So Brad Spitt will come home P10 and take home the final points paying positions. But Angelo Civic, really the story of the day. A no stop to a P2 finish. No stop to a P2 finish in this one as the last couple of cars are just working their way through. Kane and Pathaman will be next up. And that is the end of the PC Division R British Grand Prix, an all-intermediate affair. Fortune favored the brave in this one as Angelo Civic via the in-game driver of the day definitely gets my driver of the day as well. A tremendous drive from them. So fantastic run from Angelo Civic, and everybody is very shocked by the tire wear that Angelo had. So standing on the top step of the podium is False Tax. Good finish, and Angelo Civic taking a very well-deserved podium here. P2 finish on those old Inter. Stark rounding out the top 3 by just 54 milliseconds. And here is your final provisional classification. False Tax with the fastest lap point as well. And you have Angelo Civic, Stark, Ruprath, Gully, Callum, Riemann, Renovatio, Dog, Brad Spitt, Latzo, Kane, Pathaman, Wilco, Seriton, and Dr. Zados. It's your only retirement from the race and wasn't even from a crash. But a great drive from False Tax there. Plenty of pace. And then Angelo Civic with that no-stop strategy was a tremendous one. I think we've got all the info we need just to take it off there. But good race to see. Even with the rain, there was still plenty of overtaking and fighting in that one. And now we get to relax for the rest of Friday and get ready to gear up. Well, maybe not relax. Drivers may be getting their practice running in. But we go back to racing tomorrow. And that'll be first off with PC Division 1 right here on FRS Motorsports. And also Xbox Division 1 on FRS Community. 7 p.m. UTC, so about an hour and 20 minutes earlier than what this session started because of that late start. And then after that, we go to FRS Community for PC Division 4 will round out the Saturday running. And of course, Sunday we return to action. Kicking it off with PlayStation Division 1, as well as PC Division 3. And then you wrap up the race weekend on Sunday with PC Division 2, as usual. One of the tightly contested divisions in this one. But thank you all for joining me. Thank you for watching in this one. It was an interesting race. It was a good one. Now we've learned some things about intermediate tires and the rain that I think people will take it. But I'll catch you guys tomorrow on the broadcast if you're able to watch, or if you're able to tune in to Div 4, or if you're watching the Xbox race, hopefully you'll be cheering for me. But I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.